This is a pretty stark headline in the Washington Post. Check this out. Chinese leader asked Biden to prevent Pelosi from visiting Taiwan. So the Chinese leader called Joe Biden and said, hey, can you stop this? According to the Washington Post, Joe said no. Xi's request in a July 20th call to Biden described by a senior White House official who spoke anonymously, said it followed a myriad of warnings from the Chinese officials made to U.S. counterparts of what China might do in retaliation if Pelosi visited Taiwan. But Biden told Xi he couldn't oblige, said, I don't have any power over that branch of government. You know what's fascinating, Joey? And then on top of this, apparently the flight coming in with Nancy Pelosi they were terrified. The Chinese messed with the flight in some way, the Chinese Air Force.
They couldn't land or something?
Yeah. Rachel pointed out they were praying.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi was praying.
Yeah.
Well, number one,
that's a Fox News alert.
Yeah, I know. There's a couple of leads buried in this piece, actually, because Nancy Pelosi says in her quote to the Washington Post that any attack on her doesn't represent the president. It represents someone within the administration who is disgruntled by her trip and chose to leak to the press this trip. So she kind of acknowledges what we've been saying, and I believe Tom Cotton kind of broke it for us, which is that the administration probably leaked this. So that's one thing, and that's what I hone in on. Listen, I think the American people know I'm not an expert on Chinese policy. I did take 2 semesters of it at Georgetown, so I have a background on it, but what's happening today...
You took Chinese language?
No, I took U.S.-Chinese relations.
Oh, okay.
Ma'am, I'm still learning...
I was going to test you.
I'm still learning English, okay? I don't learn other languages, okay? I'm still learning the one that we...
Not even with 70% Hispanics in your neighborhood, in your hometown?
Poquito.
Poquito, okay.
But my point here is, but what I can relate to and understand is this absolute divide between the President of the United States and a Speaker of the House within his own party, and how important it is to do Americans right on this. They should have a monolithic policy and be lock in step with it, because this is a big deal. This is a big threat. And Nancy Pelosi says, well, support for my trip was bipartisan. What she doesn't say is it was bipartisan after it leaked and after China made threats. I would like to know how those Republicans felt about it 2 weeks before, when it was an inside the Beltway idea for her to go, and if they felt it was responsible, appropriate, effective, the right thing to do, if it was provocative. What is the bigger picture that we don't get a chance to see? Was President Biden...
Do you know what it is, though, Joey? Before it got leaked that she was going, as you said correctly, there were only Democrats on the trip. Do you know why? Because her son was on that trip. Her son was on that trip. She didn't want Republicans saying, here we have another Hunter Biden situation.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much in this. And look at how we were almost on the brink of a terrible... I mean, listen, twice in the last 6 months on this couch, we've had sort of like nuclear alert, remember when we were reporting on Ukraine? And then this very precarious situation. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. Why the heck was her son on that trip?
I don't have a problem with the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, and the Pentagon making a strategic decision that, hey, if we don't go and show something, China's going to escalate, this is going to be helpful. I'm not going to criticize that. But when you tell me the President, the Pentagon, were saying, hey, this is not helpful, but the Speaker of the House decides to do it anyway, but then it leaks, I guess, in an attempt to prevent her from going, and then the rest of D.C. says, whoa, 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 we can't let China bully us from going, then now we have a problem that we created. Right? This is not about not standing up to China. It's about knowing how to play chess instead of checkers. It's about having a competent government who sees 2 steps ahead rather than reacting to China's threat. And I think those are 2 very different things. It's important Americans understand people criticizing Nancy Pelosi, to include myself, for making this trip is not about not provoking China. I really don't care if we're strategically provoking them. We're going to have to stand up to them one way or another anyway. But if we're doing it as reactive, if we're doing it as literally inside tick-for-tack politics between who's the leader of the Democratic Party, that's a problem, because that has nothing to do with taking care of us. That has something to do with taking care of them.
Absolutely right. Let's go from war to peace. World peace. And the best plan for peace. Well, our energy secretary spoke to a news outlet. Jennifer Granholm was talking about energy and her future, and talked about its potential to unleash world peace. Here's Jennifer Granholm, who famously laughed at having a policy. Here's a quote. If we want to be energy secure and energy independent, that means we've got to produce our own energy. My counterpart in Ireland, the energy minister there, has said that no one has ever weaponized access to the sun. No one's ever weaponized the wind. Perhaps a move to clean energy will be the greatest peace plan the world has ever known. Joey, she says that by harnessing the sun and the wind, we will harness the so far unachievable opportunity for world peace, which we haven't really managed to get in thousands of years.
I envy people who live by the moniker ignorance is bliss. I envy someone who can have their head so far in the clouds that she probably believes the words she's saying. And she believes they're applicable to 2022, not 2052. Listen, the majority of conservatives are not just married to combustible engines. It's not like we just have this nostalgia on working on a carburetor and we got to keep the gas around. It's that we understand we got to be able to afford anything we move forward with. And as we understand how we got here with combustible engines was not the government handing out an edict saying that horses are bad for us, let's replace them. It was innovation. It was really a couple of wars helped get us there. And that's when a lot of innovation comes around. We spent this war innovating towards, I don't know, Alexandria, Virginia, instead of what could be better for our country and bringing in technology. The problem with comments like we're going to have peace through green energy, my understanding of what's happening in Ukraine now is if half of Europe wasn't dependent on Russia for oil,
that's right.
Russia might not have invaded to begin with.
That's right.
When we look at the complexities of Afghanistan, China's building a pipeline through Afghanistan. So when we talk about access to energy, cheap, affordable, accessible energy is power, and there's peace through strength. And I think we need to understand
that was the Green New Deal war, for sure, in Ukraine. That was completely about that in terms of how...
Oh, and she calls this Inflation Reduction Act a green energy bill in her comments there.
And don't forget, Joey, she has massive
up.
investments. She has big investments in EV vehicles and batteries and so forth. So there's some conflicts of interest there as well. I want to get to this headline in The Guardian because I think this is a really dangerous thing that's happening. So in Australia, the Bank of Australia has refused to give loans to people purchasing fossil fuel cars, okay? And this is, I think, coming here, it already has, when my husband was in Congress, Joey, there was something called Operation Choke Point, which was the weaponization of bank loans, because if the Biden administration didn't like your business, whether it was selling firearms or payday lenders, they were going to sic the DOJ on you for investigation. So what do banks do? They go, I'm not going to, give them a loan. I'm not going to bank with them, with those types of industries. So what is your thought on this kind of weaponization of bank loans and this pressure coming from government?
We have something called credit unions here in the United States, and that's actually going to, and locally owned banks, and that's going to become an important thing for us. We already see it in the firearms industry. If you own a firearm company and you sell parts and pieces, not even the main part of a firearm, just the online sales is getting harder and harder to do because most of those platforms are turning their back on the firearms industry. It could easily happen to the auto industry. They could weaponize our economy against easily accessible transportation and energy. Just think about that. Now, I don't know the full extent of the economy in Australia. I apologize. I'm not a linguist, not an economist, but we're going to move forward here. I'm going to come up with something. The idea that what's happening in this very pro-Western country that models after what we've made a success around the world, Australia, the idea that that could make its way here, even with our culture and government, is pretty easy to see. It
already has through Operation Chokehold. They've already attempted to do that.
And just to go back to Granholm, she says nobody's ever weaponized wind and sun. What that is, that's called a dog whistle for people that promote nuclear, because that's the actual clean, affordable, easily to obtain energy that we have available right now. Do you want to know, and this is a well-kept secret in D.C., but everybody knows it, who the biggest culprit is in stopping us from advancing nuclear energy is the defense industrial complex, because they don't want to lose the stranglehold they have on technology, so they call it a defense problem for us to bring private sector innovation into the nuclear market. Thankfully, because of some of the work by Republicans, really staff members on Capitol Hill, we've been able to, we have a bill that's passed, I think last year, the year before, that's going to allow government material and reactors to be used to test innovative private sector nuclear technology. And from it, we're probably going to have an opportunity to get cheap, affordable, and clean nuclear energy, which, as France, works out really well.
We have a partner in the green energy movement who's also opposed to nuclear energy as well. So if you're looking for a uninterrupted energy supply, you would be in support of one that's not at competition with other nations. You would be in support of nuclear energy.
It shows hypocrisy.
But clearly, you just haven't been able to harness the sun yet. I just really quickly, the Bank of Australia chief, this is fascinating, said, we've chosen 2025 because the change to electric vehicles needs to happen quickly, and we believe it can, with the right supporting policies in place, to bring a greater range of more affordable electric vehicles to Australia. I think you're absolutely right about, by the way, credit unions and small banks. I mean, you got to get loans. They have to get loans from the federal government. They have to be insured. But, you know, this will solve the question. Is capitalism demand-driven or supply-driven? Because demand says, I need my car loan, my internal combustion engine car loan.
And what are you're talking about cutting out access to funding, access to money for people who can only afford the cheapest form of energy. Who's this going to hurt?
Yeah.
It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt.
They want us in subways. They want us in buses. They want to have cars and jets, and the rest of us, we have to use public transportation.
It's going to hurt families that can only afford the cheapest mode of transportation, which is a gas engine car. And it's going to hurt small businesses that need to buy diesel trucks to get their parts and pieces and services.
No.
Well said.
Try catching a bus in 15 below Wisconsin. That's not fun.
It's not great. It's really not.
Joey, thank you.
I can't run that fast, so I couldn't catch one if I tried.
I've seen you run. You probably could, actually.
That's pretty good.
And you're going to be on the Big
Bionic.
Sunday show today, right?
Yeah.
5
Yeah,
o'clock.
we got Tyrus, Lisa Booth, Alicia Acuna, and then I'm batting cleanup because they're going to knock them all out of the park.
All right.
Sweet.
All right.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you, Joey.